There are 3 books in the Bible, often called the wisdom literature. They are Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. Together, these books explore what it means to live wisely before God. Proverbs begins by showing us that God is wise and just. It presents a world ordered by God's wisdom, where justice matters and our choices have consequences. In that vision, the righteous are rewarded, and the wicked bring trouble upon themselves. In other words, you reap what you sow. But then Ecclesiastes looks at the same world and notices something unsettling. People do not always get what they deserve. The world does not always appear fair. Life is unpredictable, difficult to understand, and often as elusive as vapor. That raises a deeper question. If life can be so confusing and unfair, is God still wise and just? That is the question explored in the final book of wisdom, the book of Job. Job begins with a strange and mysterious scene in the heavens. The heavens are pictured like a heavenly command center. God is there with angelic beings called the sons of God. They are gathered before him, as if reporting for duty. Then God draws attention to Job. Job is described as God's servant, a man who is righteous, blameless, and upright. But one of these heavenly beings steps forward. In Hebrew, he is called the Satan. This is not first presented as a personal name, but as a title. It means the adversary, the accuser, the one who opposes. He is the one who questions the way God is governing the world. And he raises a challenge about Job. He suggests that Job may not truly love God. Maybe Job is faithful only because God has blessed him. Maybe Job obeys because the system works in his favor. The accusation is simple and disturbing. Take away Job's blessings, and his true heart will be revealed. So God permits this test to take place. The Satan is allowed to bring suffering upon Job, and Job loses his wealth, his children, his security, and eventually his health. Everything in his life collapses with devastating force, and the tragedy is that Job has done nothing to deserve it. God himself has already said that Job is righteous. The remarkable thing is that, in the middle of this suffering, Job still honors God. At least, that is what we see in the first 2 chapters. But then chapter 3 shows us what Job is really feeling inside. Job opens his mouth and pours out a poem of grief. He curses the day he was born. He wishes that his life had never begun. This is not shallow complaint. It is the voice of a man crushed by loss and unable to make sense of his pain. After this, Job's friends come to visit him. At first, they come to comfort him. But as the conversation unfolds, their comfort turns into accusation. They believe Job must have done something terribly wrong. Their logic is based on a simple idea. God is just, and the world is ordered by God's justice. So if Job is suffering, then Job must be getting what he deserves. For the next many chapters, Job and his friends go back and forth in dense Hebrew poetry. The friends keep trying to explain why God would send such suffering. They speculate about hidden sins. They even begin to invent lists of possible wrongs Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence. And the story has already told us that Job is innocent. At the same time, Job is not calm or detached. He moves through grief, anger, confusion, and hope. At times, he is confident that God is still wise and just. At other times, he doubts God's goodness and questions God's justice. He even accuses God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. By the end of the dialogue, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person. And then God does come. God appears to Job in the form of a great storm cloud. But God does not give Job the direct answer he expected. God does not explain the heavenly conversation with the Satan. God does not lay out the hidden reason behind Job's suffering. Instead, God takes Job on a kind of tour through the universe. He shows Job the vastness and complexity of the world. He asks Job whether he can run creation even for a single day. He asks whether Job understands the foundations of the earth, the patterns of the sky, or the instincts of wild creatures. God points to details of the world that human beings may see every day, yet barely understand. But God understands them all. He knows creation intimately. He gives attention to the beauty, order, and mystery of the universe in ways we have never imagined. He also cares for places and creatures that human beings may never see. Then God concludes by describing two wondrous beasts. They are powerful, untamable, and dangerous. They could destroy a human being without even thinking about it. And yet God does not call them evil. They are part of His good world. Their wildness does not place them outside His wisdom. And that is God's whole defense. It can feel strange at first. Job wanted an explanation for his pain, but God gives him a vision of creation. From Job's point of view, it looked as though God was not being just. But God's perspective is infinitely larger than Job's. God is dynamically involved with a universe full of complexity, beauty, danger, and mystery. He is making decisions within a world far larger than any human mind can comprehend. And this is what God calls wisdom. So when Job demands that God defend himself, the demand is exposed as deeply limited. Job could not fully understand the complexity of God's wisdom, even if God explained it to him. This leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learns why he suffered. He never gets to hear about the heavenly scene from the beginning of the book, and yet he is able to come to peace before God. He learns to live again in the fear of the Lord. But the book does not end there. After this, God restores to Job double what he had lost. And that ending is also surprising. Is this restoration a reward for passing an elaborate test? No, that misses the point of the story. The book has already shown that Job's suffering was not a punishment. So his restoration is not simply a reward. Job's loss was not proof of God's anger, and Job's blessing is not proof that he earned God's favor. Rather, God, in His wisdom, chooses to give Job a gift. We are not told why, but we are shown what kind of person Job has become. Whether he receives good or endures suffering, Job can trust the wisdom of God. That is the book of Job, and it brings the wisdom series to a powerful conclusion. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job each offer a unique perspective on the good life. Proverbs teaches us to pursue wisdom in a world ordered by God. Ecclesiastes teaches us to be honest about life's mystery and unpredictability. And Job teaches us to trust God's wisdom, even when we cannot understand our suffering. Together, these books invite us to live wisely. They call us to walk humbly in the fear of the Lord.